Success tastes like expensive wine and spite. I was savoring both when my mother's number lit up my phone screen for the first time in 3 years. The Chateau Lafite Rothschild 2010, a gift to myself for landing the Peterson account, suddenly tasted like vinegar in my mouth. Hey story lovers! Quick check-in, which part of the globe are you tuning in from? Drop your location below. If you're new and like what you hear, join us by subscribing. Now, let's continue. I'm Lola, and I've spent a decade building a life that doesn't include my family. The irony of their timing never fails to amaze me. They only remember I exist when their golden child, my sister Megan, creates another catastrophe they can't handle. Lola, please don't hang up. Mother's voice cracked, lacking its usual polished control. It's about Megan. And Lucy. My 9-year-old niece's name made my finger pause over the end call button. Lucy, the only innocent player in our family's twisted game of favorites. What has she done now? The words came out sharp enough to cut. She's gone. Just gone. Left Lucy with us 3 days ago, said she was running to the store. A sob caught in her throat. Her phone's disconnected. The apartment manager said she cleared out last week. Lucy keeps asking when her mommy's coming back, and I don't know what to tell her. The wine glass trembled in my hand. I set it down before I could give in to the urge to throw it against the wall. And naturally, you're calling me to clean up her mess. Again. You've always been the responsible one. Funny how I'm suddenly responsible when you need something. Where was that recognition when I graduated top of my class? Or when I made partner at 30? The bitter words tumbled out before I could stop them. Please, Lola. This isn't about us. Lucy needs us. There hasn't been an us since you and Dad shipped me off to live with Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George when I was 12. Because Megan needed more attention. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. We both knew the truth, they'd chosen Megan, always Megan, until they'd effectively orphaned their younger daughter. Your father and I. We can't handle Lucy right now. We're not as young as we used to be, and with your father's heart condition. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in my empty penthouse. Of course. And Megan knew that, didn't she? She knew exactly what she was doing, dropping Lucy with you. Because eventually, you'd have to call me. More silence. Then, will you at least come see Lucy? She asks about you sometimes. The knife twisted deeper. I'd stayed away to protect myself, but in doing so, I'd abandoned Lucy to the same toxic environment I'd escaped. My wine glass caught the light, blood-red liquid casting shadows on my white marble countertop. The same color as the dress Megan wore to Dad's 65th birthday party last year, the one I wasn't invited to, but saw pictures of on Facebook. I'll come tomorrow, I said finally. But not for you or Dad. And certainly not for Megan. Thank you, Lola. We're at. I remember the address, Mother. Some things you can't forget, no matter how hard you try. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the window. The city lights blurred behind my image, creating a halo effect that made me look like I was burning. Maybe I was. 3 years of carefully constructed peace, shattered by one phone call. But this time would be different. This time, I wasn't the powerless 12-year-old they could push aside. This time, I had resources, influence, and most importantly, nothing left to lose. I picked up my wine glass and raised it to my reflection. Well, Megan, I whispered, you finally did it. You finally gave me the perfect reason to destroy you. The wine tasted sweet again. The familiar crunch of gravel under my tires felt like bones breaking. Our family home hadn't changed, same peeling white paint, same crooked shutters, same suffocating air of disappointment. Mother stood on the porch, wearing her favorite pearl necklace like armor. "You didn't have to dress up," she said, eyeing my Armani suit. "It's just family." "This isn't a family reunion, Mother. This is a crisis management meeting." I brushed past her, the scent of her signature Chanel making my stomach turn. "Where's Lucy?" "Upstairs in Megan's old room." She wrung her hands. "She's been so quiet." Of course they'd put her in Megan's room. The shrine to the golden child, preserved like a museum exhibit. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heels striking each step like a judge's gavel. Lucy sat cross-legged on Megan's old bed, surrounded by teenage photos of her mother. Small, pale, drowning in an oversized sweater I recognized as one of Megan's cast-offs. She looked up, and for a moment, I saw myself at 12, lost, confused, wondering why I wasn't enough. "Aunt Lola." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hey, kiddo." I kept my distance, not wanting to spook her. "Rough week?" She nodded, clutching a photo frame. "They keep saying Mom will come back, but..." Her lower lip trembled. "She packed all our stuff last week. Said we were moving somewhere better. Then she brought me here and..." The rage I'd been containing threatened to explode. Megan hadn't just abandoned her daughter, she'd planned it, calculated it. Executed it with the same precision she'd used to manipulate our family for years. "Lucy, would you like to?" "There you are." Father's voice boomed from the doorway. "Still making dramatic entrances, I see." I turned slowly, meeting his gaze. He'd aged, but his eyes still held that mixture of disappointment and dismissal I remembered so well. "Hello, Father." "Still making excuses for Megan, I see. Now, Lola, you don't understand the pressure she's been under." "Pressure?" I laughed, sharp and cold. "Like the pressure of raising a child alone. The pressure of maintaining a job. Or just the pressure of basic human decency. Your sister is gone." I cut him off. "Again. And instead of acknowledging that she's abandoned her child, you're standing there defending her. Some things never change." Mother appeared behind him, clutching her pearls. "We just need to give her time. She always comes back. And that makes it okay." I gestured to Lucy, who had shrunk further into herself. "Look at her. Really look. Does she look like a child who just needs to give her mother time?" They both glanced at Lucy, then quickly away, the same way they used to look at me. Like my pain was an inconvenience to their perfect family narrative. "We've been thinking," Mother said carefully, "perhaps Lucy could stay with Eleanor and George for a while. They did such a good job with you." The words hit like a slap. "You mean like when you shipped me off because Megan needed more attention? Because dealing with 2 children was too much work? That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is history repeating itself." I moved to stand between them and Lucy. "But this time, it's going to be different." Father's face darkened. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what's going to happen. Lucy's coming home with me." The silence that followed was deafening. Lucy's head snapped up, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "You can't," Mother started. "I can, and I will. Unless you prefer I contact Child Protective Services. I'm sure they'd be very interested in how Megan abandoned her daughter after systematically emptying their apartment." Father stepped forward, his authority card ready to play. "Now listen here." "No, you listen." I pulled out my phone. "1 call. That's all it takes. Your choice." They exchanged glances, the same silent communication I remembered from childhood, the weighing of options. The calculation of what would cause the least damage to their precious reputation. Finally, Mother nodded stiffly. Perhaps. Perhaps it would be best. Just until Megan returns. Of course, I smiled, all teeth and triumph. Just until Megan returns. Behind me, Lucy released a shaky breath. I didn't turn around. I couldn't let her see the darkness in my eyes, the satisfaction of finally having the upper hand. Because Megan wasn't coming back. Not until I was ready for her to face what she'd done, to Lucy, to me, to all of us. And when that time came, I'd be ready. Lucy's bedroom in my penthouse still had that new paint smell when I found the first letter. 3 days of living together, and already the secrets were surfacing, hidden between the clothes Megan had packed for her daughter. I thought you might want to read this, Lucy said, holding out a crumpled envelope. Her small fingers trembled. Mom wrote it before she left. The paper felt like poison in my hands. Megan's flowing script covered both sides, a masterpiece of manipulation addressed to our parents. They're going to take everything from me, I read aloud, my voice growing colder with each word. Lucy's trust fund, my inheritance, all of it. I have to disappear for a while, just until I can fix this. Don't let them turn Lucy against me. Lucy hugged herself, drowning in one of my old Harvard sweatshirts. What trust fund? I folded the letter carefully, my mind racing. When did you last see Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George? Never. Lucy's answer hit like a sledgehammer. Mom always said they didn't want to see us. That they were mad at her for having me so young. The laugh that escaped me wasn't kind. Of course she did. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through recent calls. Lucy, how would you like to meet them today? Her eyes widened. Really? Really? But first. I dialed my private investigator. Marcus. I need everything you can find on my sister's finances for the past 9 years. Focus on any accounts in Lucy's name. Eleanor and George's house smelled like cinnamon and safety, just as it had when I was 12. Lucy pressed against my side as we walked up the familiar path, her grip on my hand almost painful. Lola. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her silver hair gleaming in the afternoon light. Her eyes fixed on Lucy, and tears welled immediately. Oh my God. Surprise, I said dryly. Meet your great-granddaughter. The one Megan told you didn't want to know you. George appeared behind his wife, his weathered face darkening with understanding. Come inside, both of you. There's something you need to see. In their study, George pulled out a thick folder. We've been trying to reach Megan for years. After Lucy was born, we set up a trust fund for her education. Your grandfather and I both come from old money, Lola. You know this. I nodded. My own trust fund had helped build my consulting firm. We did the same for Lucy, Eleanor continued, her voice tight. But every time we tried to contact Megan, she'd moved. Changed numbers. The lawyers couldn't find her. How much? The question burned my throat. George named a figure that made my blood freeze. It becomes accessible when Lucy turns 18, or in case of emergency, like abandonment by a parent. Lucy's grip on my hand tightened. Is that why Mom left? Because of money. No, sweetheart, I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. She left because she couldn't access it. But I bet she's been trying. Eleanor moved to her desk, pulling out more papers. The trust requires annual audits. Last month, we discovered someone tried to forge documents claiming Lucy was living with a legal guardian, your mother, Lola. The signatures were obviously fake. When was this? 3 weeks ago. The timeline aligned perfectly. Megan's disappearance, Lucy's carefully packed bags, the letter meant to manipulate our parents into compliance. She'd tried to steal Lucy's future and failed. I have copies of everything, George said quietly. Including proof that Megan attempted fraud. Lucy's small voice cut through the tension. What happens to me now? I knelt before her, seeing my own childhood pain reflected in her eyes. That depends on you, kiddo. But I promise you one thing, your mother won't get to hurt you again. Or take my money. No. I brushed her hair back, my voice hardening. She won't take anything else from you. Eleanor and George exchanged looks loaded with understanding. They'd watched me rebuild myself after my family's betrayal. Now they'd help me protect Lucy from the same fate. My phone buzzed, Marcus, with preliminary findings. The message made my lips curl into a predatory smile. Lucy, I said softly, how about we get some ice cream with your great-grandparents? We have 18 years of memories to start making up for. And while we did that, I'd start building the trap that would ensure Megan could never harm her daughter again. Because some debts can only be paid in revenge, served cold and calculated, with compound interest. Marcus's report landed in my inbox at 3 a.m, its contents burning through my carefully constructed plans like acid. I stared at my laptop screen, the glow casting shadows across my home office while Lucy slept down the hall. You're sure about this? I asked during our emergency video call. Marcus nodded, his tired face serious. 6 different identities in the past 9 years. Each time, she'd establish credit, take out loans using Lucy's social security number, then vanish. The pattern's consistent. And the most recent. 2 weeks before she left Lucy with your parents. She took out a $100,000 loan using forged guardianship papers. The money's already gone. I closed my eyes, remembering Lucy's threadbare clothes, the way she'd marveled at having her own bathroom in my penthouse. Where did it go? That's the interesting part. Marcus's typing echoed through the speakers. Wire transfers to an offshore account, then scattered withdrawals across 3 states. But here's what caught my attention, there's a pattern to her movements. She's not running away. She's circling back. My phone buzzed, a text from Mother, Megan called. Says she's sorry. Wants to make things right. Of course she did. The trust fund fraud had failed, but Lucy was still her meal ticket. I switched off my phone without responding. A small sound at the door made me freeze. Lucy stood there in her oversized pajamas, holding the stuffed rabbit Eleanor had given her. I had a bad dream. I closed the laptop. Want to talk about it? She padded over, climbing into my lap like she belonged there. Maybe she did. Mom came back. She was angry that I told you about the letter. She said I ruined everything. My arms tightened around her. Lucy, look at me. Your mother. A crash downstairs cut me off. The security system hadn't chimed, which meant whoever entered had the code. Only 5 people had that code, and 3 of them were asleep across town. Stay here, I whispered, moving Lucy behind my desk. Lock the door after me. Don't open it unless you hear me say, Harvard sweater. The hallway was dark, but I knew every inch of my home. I moved silently, following the sound of someone rummaging through my kitchen. The spare key was always under the rose bush, Megan's voice drifted up. Some things never change, little sister. I flicked on the lights. She stood at my kitchen island, looking expensive in a way that made my blood boil. Designer clothes bought with stolen money, Lucy's money. You look well for someone who's been on the run, I said coldly. Not running. Strategic retreat. She smiled, the same smile that had charmed our parents for decades. Where's my daughter? Safe. Unlike her social security number. Her smile flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. 6 identities, Megan. 6 cities where you destroyed Lucy's future before she could even have one. Did you think no one would find out? You always were dramatic. She waved dismissively. I did what I had to do. Lucy understands. Lucy understands that her mother used her as a human credit card. My voice could have frozen hell. She understands that while she wore second-hand clothes and went hungry, you were living like royalty on stolen money. I'm her mother. You're a thief. And now you're a trespasser. I pulled out my phone. Leave, or I call the police. Your choice. She moved closer, dropping her voice. Mother and father won't let you keep her. They know I'm the better parent. I just need time to. To what? Steal more of her money. Forge more documents. I laughed harshly. Eleanor and George know everything, Megan. The trust fund fraud, the loans, all of it. You've lost. The mask cracked. For a moment, I saw the real Megan, desperate, cornered, dangerous. You bitch. You've always been jealous. Aunt Lola. Lucy's voice from the stairs made us both turn. She stood there, small but straight-backed, clutching her rabbit. I called the police. They're on their way. Megan's face contorted. Lucy, baby, you don't understand. I understand that you stole from me. Lucy's voice shook but held firm. And I want you to leave. The sirens in the distance made Megan's decision for her. She grabbed her bag, pausing at the door. This isn't over. No, I agreed, watching her flee into the night. It's just beginning. Lucy's hand slipped into mine. I'm sorry I didn't stay in the office. I squeezed her fingers. Don't be. Sometimes the best revenge is simply standing your ground. The sirens grew closer, and with them, my resolve strengthened. Megan was right about one thing, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The temporary custody papers felt heavy in my hands as I watched Lucy sleep on Eleanor's couch. 3 weeks since Megan's midnight visit, and the world had shifted on its axis. My phone buzzed, another message from Mother, their 5th today. They're getting desperate, Eleanor said, setting down 2 cups of tea. Henry called George this morning. Apparently, Megan's lawyer contacted them. What lawyer? The paper crinkled in my tightening grip. The one claiming you kidnapped Lucy. Eleanor's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Your father threatened to support Megan's custody claim unless you see reason. A laugh escaped me, bitter as burnt coffee. Reason? Like when they sent me away because it was reasonable for Megan to have more attention. Lucy stirred, mumbling in her sleep. The bruise-like shadows under her eyes had finally started to fade, but now this. My phone lit up again, an email from Marcus. Security footage from my building's lobby, timestamped last night. I watched Megan escort our parents inside, all 3 of them talking to the doorman. My stomach turned to ice. They're building a case, I said, showing Eleanor the footage. Making it look like I'm keeping Lucy from her loving family. Then we build a better one. Eleanor pulled out a thick manila envelope. George and I have been gathering evidence since that night. Bank records, loan applications, school reports showing Lucy's frequent absences. A key turned in the front door. George entered, his face grim. Lola, we have a problem. Henry's filing for emergency guardianship of Lucy. Claims you're emotionally unstable, seeking revenge against Megan by taking her daughter. The irony burned like acid. And Megan's fraud? The stolen money? They're calling it desperate measures of a struggling single mother. He sat heavily. Your parents are backing her story. Lucy whimpered in her sleep, curling tighter around her rabbit. The sight of her, so small, so vulnerable, made something snap inside me. Call Judge Matthews, I told Eleanor. The one who helped with my emancipation. Tell her it's urgent. Lola, George started. No. I stood, my voice barely above a whisper. They took my childhood. They will not take hers. My phone rang, Mother's number. This time, I answered. We're in your lobby, she said without preamble. Security won't let us up without your approval. Please, Lola. Let's discuss this as a family. Family. The word tasted like poison. Like when you discussed sending me away. Or when you discussed letting Megan steal Lucy's future. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're here because Megan needs something. Again. And you're enabling her. Again. She's changed. No, Mother. I've changed. I watched Lucy sleep, peaceful for the first time in weeks. Tell Megan her lawyer can contact mine. And tell Father his threats mean nothing. I have copies of every check he wrote to cover Megan's fraudulent loans. Silence crackled over the line. Then, you wouldn't. Try me. I learned from the best, after all. Megan's not the only one who knows how to play games. Eleanor touched my arm, showing me her phone. A text from Judge Matthews, bring everything tomorrow. 9 a.m. It's not too late, Mother pleaded. We can fix this. Be a family again. Through the window, I could see them in the lobby, Mother, Father, and Megan, looking up at Eleanor's apartment. The perfect family portrait, missing only their discarded daughter and stolen granddaughter. You're right, I said softly. It's not too late. For Lucy. I ended the call, turning to Eleanor. How long until the emergency custody hearing? 3 days. She squeezed my hand. Are you ready for what comes next? Lucy stirred again, this time opening her eyes. Aunt Lola. Are they here? I moved to her side, smoothing her hair. Yes, but they can't hurt you anymore. I promise. Like you promised about the Harvard sweater. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Exactly like that. I met Eleanor's eyes over Lucy's head. Some promises you keep no matter what. Even if keeping them meant burning every bridge behind you. Even if it meant becoming the villain in their story to be the hero in hers. The war for Lucy's future had begun. And this time, I wasn't the powerless child they could discard. This time, I was ready. The courthouse bathroom mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized. 3 hours into the emergency custody hearing, and Megan's performance had been flawless, tears, remorse, promises of change. The perfect prodigal daughter, with our parents nodding supportively from the gallery. My phone vibrated, Marcus. Bad news. The offshore account's empty. She must have moved the money again. The paper towel shredded in my hands. Without the money trail, proving Megan's fraud became exponentially harder. She'd planned this, timed it perfectly. Just like when we were kids. The bathroom door creaked open. Hiding won't help your case. Megan's voice dripped false concern. Lucy needs her mother. Like she needed you when you were emptying her college fund. I turned slowly. Or when you were using her social security number for loans. Prove it. She smiled, checking her mascara in the mirror. Oh wait, you can't. Funny how evidence disappears, isn't it? What do you want, Megan? Drop the custody case. Tell the judge you overreacted. She reapplied her lipstick, perfect coral pink. I'll let you see Lucy sometimes. Maybe holidays. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, matching the ringing in my ears. You're not getting her trust fund. No. She capped her lipstick. Mother and father are very concerned about your mental state. Your obsession with revenge. The way you've poisoned Lucy against me. Her smile widened. The judge seems quite sympathetic. The door opened again. Lucy stood there, small and pale in her navy dress. Aunt Lola. They're calling us back in. Megan moved toward her daughter. Baby, come here. Lucy stepped back, pressing against my side. The gesture wasn't lost on Megan. Her mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. See, she hissed. This is exactly what I mean. You've turned her against me. The courtroom felt colder when we returned. Judge Matthews' expression gave nothing away as she reviewed the new documents Megan's lawyer had submitted. Your Honor, Megan's lawyer stood, we have evidence that Miss Crawford has been systematically alienating Lucy from her mother and grandparents. Text messages, emails, witness statements. My lawyer objected, but I barely heard him. I was watching Lucy, sitting between Eleanor and George. She looked so much like I did at 12, waiting for adults to decide her fate. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, Miss Crawford's fixation on alleged financial improprieties suggests a concerning pattern of behavior. Her own grandparents had to take her in as a child due to similar unfounded accusations against her sister. The old rage rose like bile. They were rewriting history again, turning me into the villain of their story. Just like before. Your Honor, I stood, ignoring my lawyer's warning hand. I request a brief recess. In the hallway, Eleanor grabbed my arm. Lola, don't. I have to. I pulled away, heading for the courthouse steps where reporters had gathered. Megan wanted to play dirty. Fine. My phone felt heavy as I dialed Marcus's number. Release everything. Lola, think about everything, Marcus. The bank records, the loan applications, the school reports. Send it all to every news outlet waiting outside. Now. I ended the call, turning to find Lucy standing behind me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I heard what Mom said in the bathroom. My carefully constructed plans crumbled. In trying to protect Lucy, I was dragging her into exactly the kind of public spectacle I'd wanted to avoid. Your Honor. Megan's voice rang out from the courthouse doors. See? She's trying to manipulate the media. This is exactly what we've been talking about. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. Lucy flinched, and in that moment, I saw myself making the same mistake our parents had, putting adult vendettas above a child's well-being. Judge Matthews appeared in the doorway, her face thunderous. Miss Crawford, return to my courtroom immediately. Lucy's hand found mine as cameras continued clicking. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too, I whispered, leading her back inside. Because for the first time, I realized revenge might cost me the very thing I was fighting to protect. And Megan knew it. Her triumphant smile said everything, checkmate, little sister. Just like always. Judge Matthews' chambers felt like a tomb. The morning headlines screamed across her desk, family fortune at center of custody battle, sister versus sister. The fight for Lucy, fraud allegations rock prominent family. Explain this. The judge tapped Marcus's full report, delivered to every major news outlet yesterday. Now. Before I could speak, the door burst open. Megan stormed in, followed by our parents and both lawyers. Your Honor, this is exactly what we. Sit down, Miss Crawford. Judge Matthews' voice could have frozen hell. All of you. Now. Lucy's school records lay open on the desk, dozens of absences, sudden withdrawals, missing parent signatures. Next to them, bank statements showed a pattern of deposits and withdrawals that made my stomach turn. These records, the judge continued, show systematic financial abuse spanning 9 years. Miss Crawford, Megan, would you care to explain why your daughter's social security number appears on loans in 6 different states? Megan's mask slipped. I had no choice. Lucy's trust fund is untouchable until she's 18. Eleanor's voice cut through the room as she and George entered. We made sure of that after we saw what you did to Lola's college fund. Mother gasped. Father's face darkened. What are you talking about? The money you thought Lola spent. George's voice was steel. Megan borrowed it. With forged signatures. Just like she's been doing with Lucy's identity. That's a lie. Megan stood, desperate. They're all lying. Mother, Father, you know I wouldn't. Sit down. Judge Matthews pointed to a manila envelope. This arrived this morning. Care to explain why you were attempting to access Lucy's trust fund just yesterday? With forged guardianship papers. The room tilted. Yesterday, while she was playing grieving mother in court, she'd been trying to steal Lucy's future. Again. I needed it for Lucy, Megan's voice cracked. Everything I did was for her. Like abandoning her. The words escaped before I could stop them. Like using her identity to fund your lifestyle while she wore second-hand clothes. At least I didn't turn her against her family. No, you just sold her future to the highest bidder. Enough. Judge Matthews slammed her hand down. Where is Lucy now? With the court counselor, my lawyer answered. As requested. The judge nodded. Bring her in. I think it's time we heard from Lucy herself. Lucy entered, clutching her rabbit. Her eyes darted between Megan and me, then fixed on the judge. Lucy, Judge Matthews said gently, do you understand what's happening here? Yes. Her voice was small but steady. You're deciding if I stay with Aunt Lola or go with Mom. And what do you want? Megan leaned forward, her most winning smile in place. Baby, you know Mommy loves. Miss Crawford, one more word and I'll have you removed. The judge turned back to Lucy. Go on, sweetheart. Lucy's fingers twisted in her rabbit's fur. Last week, Mom came to my school. She said if I went with her, we'd have lots of money. That we could buy anything we wanted. Her voice shook. But she wanted me to sign some papers first. The room went deadly quiet. What kind of papers, Lucy? The judge asked. Bank papers. She said. She said if I signed them, we could get my college money now instead of later. Lucy's eyes met mine. But Aunt Lola always says education is the one thing nobody can take from you. Megan lunged forward. She's lying. Lucy, tell them you're lying. Security. Judge Matthews called sharply. As guards entered, Megan's composure shattered completely. You ungrateful little, after everything I've done. Mother, Father, tell them. But our parents sat frozen, finally seeing their golden child for what she was. Your Honor, my lawyer stood, given these revelations. Indeed. The judge's eyes were flint. Bailiff, please take Miss Crawford into custody pending charges of identity theft and attempted fraud. As for custody. She looked at Lucy, then at me. Sometimes the best revenge is living well. Don't you agree, Miss Crawford? I met Megan's eyes as the bailiff approached. For once, I didn't see my perfect older sister. I saw a stranger who'd finally run out of second chances. Lucy's hand slipped into mine as Megan was led away, our parents' stunned silence worth more than any victory speech. Sometimes justice comes not with a bang, but with the quiet triumph of truth finally heard. The Harvard acceptance letter trembled in Lucy's hands. I got in, she whispered, then louder, Aunt Lola, I got in. I caught her in a fierce hug, remembering a smaller version of her clutching a stuffed rabbit. Now 16, she stood nearly as tall as me, her dreams intact despite everything Megan had tried to steal. Of course you did. Eleanor's voice cracked with pride. She and George had insisted on being here for this moment, just as they'd been there for every important milestone since the custody battle. My phone buzzed, Mother's number. The same call she made every month, seeking reconciliation, promising change. I declined it, just like always. Mom's hearing is next week, Lucy said quietly, setting the letter down. They want me to testify at her parole board meeting. The words hung heavy in the air. 7 years into her sentence for fraud and identity theft, Megan was making another bid for freedom. Another attempt to rewrite history. You don't have to go, I reminded her. I know. Lucy traced the Harvard crest on her acceptance package. But I think I want to. Not for her. For me. Understanding clicked into place. Lucy wasn't that frightened 9-year-old anymore, just as I was no longer the angry sister seeking revenge. We'd both grown beyond the roles Megan had tried to force us into. I'll go with you, I offered. We all will, George added, his hand finding Eleanor's. The parole hearing room felt smaller than I remembered. Megan sat at the front, prison pale but still beautiful, still wearing manipulation like perfume. Our parents sat behind her, older, grayer, but still choosing her side even after everything. Lucy stepped up to the podium, her voice steady. My mother taught me something valuable, she began. She taught me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice. Megan's perfect mask cracked slightly. Every day, we choose who we want to be, Lucy continued. 7 years ago, my aunt chose to protect me instead of seeking revenge. She chose to build something new instead of destroying something broken. I felt Eleanor's hand slip into mine. So today, I choose to. Lucy met Megan's eyes directly. I choose to forgive you, Mom. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I choose to succeed despite you, not because of you. And I choose to leave the past where it belongs, in the past. The parole board shifted, papers rustling. Mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Father stared straight ahead, seeing but not understanding, just like always. Harvard, Megan said suddenly. You got in. Lucy nodded once. I had dreams like that once. Something genuine flickered across Megan's face, regret, perhaps, or recognition of what she'd thrown away. I know, Lucy replied. The difference is, I'm actually going to achieve mine. We left before the board announced their decision. It didn't matter anymore. The real victory wasn't in Megan's punishment or my revenge. It was in the young woman walking beside me, head high, future bright. Back home, Lucy pinned her acceptance letter next to my old Harvard diploma. Think they have enough room in the economics department for another Crawford? They better. I smiled, watching her arrange the pins just so. Though technically, you're a Crawford Mills now. She turned, her expression serious. The adoption papers came through. I nodded. We'd filed them months ago, but the timing felt right to share now. If you want to sign them. Lucy launched herself into my arms, just like she had that first night in my penthouse. I've been your daughter since the day you chose me over revenge, she whispered. My phone buzzed again, Mother, persistent as ever. But this time, Lucy reached over and declined it for me. Some choices, she said wisely, you have to keep making every day. I looked at our reflection in the window, aunt and niece, guardian and ward, now mother and daughter. All by choice, not chance. Not revenge or obligation or guilt. The Harvard acceptance letter caught the late afternoon light, casting crimson shadows across our faces. Like blood, I thought, but also like sunrise. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply living well, loving fiercely, and letting go of the past one conscious choice at a time. Lucy smiled at our reflection, and I smiled back. We'd chosen well.